Think about the last, like, really petty argument you had.
Oh, we've all had those.
Right. Or maybe think about a time you walked away from what seemed like a totally normal conversation, but you just felt completely and utterly drained, like you suddenly needed a 3-hour nap.
Yeah, that sudden exhaustion is so real.
It really is. Or, I mean, let's go back even further. Think about your own teenage rebellion.
Oh, boy.
You know, the door slamming, the shouting, the endless friction with your parents.
The classic angst.
Exactly. But what if, and hear me out here, what if absolutely none of those things were actually about emotions?
That is a wild thought to start with.
Right. What if it wasn't about hormones or personality clashes or just needing to be right? What if every single one of those interactions was actually this subconscious primal battle
Here.
in an invisible energy economy?
Wow. I mean, it is a profound shift in perspective because if you adopt this framework, you are no longer looking at human behavior through, standard psychology or sociology.
Right.
You're looking at it strictly through the lens of survival and resource allocation.
And that is exactly the lens we are looking through today. We are doing a deep dive into this incredibly intriguing translated excerpt.
It's a fascinating case.
It really is. It's from a 2006 text called The Chapter of Preaching Tao, Article 9, Life and Energy. And it's written by an author named Tao Wan.
Yeah, and the mission for today is really to unpack this highly philosophical, kind of dense text.
Right. Our goal for you, the listener, is to discover a widely different perspective on human behavior. We're going to explore how every interaction you have with your spouse, your kids, your boss, even the government might actually be a secret quest.
A quest to basically steal, protect, or share energy.
Exactly.
And this deep dive, it will challenge you to question the very foundation of why we interact with each other. It takes these concepts we think we understand, like love, family conflict, global politics, and strips them down.
Strips them down to a singular, almost terrifyingly simple primal motivation.
Yeah, the source material presents some really bold paradigm-shifting claims that require us to kind of suspend our usual assumptions.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why a teenager is slamming doors or why a partner is giving you the silent treatment under this philosophy, we actually have to zoom way, way out.
Like all the way out.
Yes.
Yes.
Out into the cosmos.
Yeah.
We need to understand the basic building blocks of this entire theory first.
Well, the author establishes a very specific foundational premise right from the opening lines.
Okay, what is it?
The text states that the universe is, quite simply, an energy mass that is utilized by life.
An energy mass.
Right. And within this entire universe, there are only three fundamental elements: structure, consciousness, and energy.
Structure, consciousness, energy. Got it.
Yeah, that is the entire cosmic recipe. And they're completely interdependent. Without structure, there is no life.
Makes sense.
Without consciousness, no life. And without energy, obviously, no life.
I need to stop you there for a second because, okay, energy I get and structure I get. But the author uses this specific phrase, holographic energy.
Yes, holographic energy.
And frankly, I was a bit lost there. When I hear the word holographic, my mind immediately goes to like a 3D projection or a sci-fi movie. What is the actual mechanism the author is describing here?
It is a dense term, I'll admit. But think of it this way. In a literal hologram, if you shatter the holographic plate, every single tiny shard still contains the entire complete image.
Wait, really? Every piece?
Every piece. It's not like a normal photograph where cutting it in half leaves you with half a picture. The blueprint of the whole exists in every single piece.
Oh, wow.
So the text draws a distinction between chaotic energy and this holographic energy. Chaotic energy is just wild, unordered force.
Right.
But when energy attaches to a consciousness and a structure, it becomes holographic. It becomes ordered. It contains the blueprint and the purposeful power of life itself.
I'm trying to visualize this. So it's essentially like wild lightning up in the sky versus electricity in a city grid.
That's a great analogy.
Because the wild lightning is chaotic energy. It's incredibly powerful, but it's completely useless in that state. Like can't power a toaster.
No, it can't.
But when you capture that wild lightning and route it through a power grid, which is the structure, and give it a direction, the consciousness, suddenly that chaotic energy has a purpose.
Exactly.
It becomes holographic. It manifests true power.
That is a highly accurate way to translate the concept.
Yeah.
Unordered energy is basically powerless. Ordered holographic energy sustains existence.
Sustains existence. Okay.
Right, and once you are a living structure, once you are a human being, the text dictates that your structure naturally must absorb energy to survive.
Like eating or breathing.
Sort of, but energetically. Like planting a seed. It absorbs energy to grow, and if it loses that energy, it withers and dies.
Right.
Which leads to the central thesis of the author's work. The process of life is essentially a competition for energy.
So bringing this right down to the listener, according to this framework, your entire life, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, is just one continuous float down a great rushing river of energy gain and energy loss.
Yeah, it's a zero-sum game.
Every day is a struggle to acquire more of it, and a desperate attempt not to lose what you already possess.
Those who acquire more energy thrive, and those who acquire less become fragile, and their existence is short-lived.
Okay, so if life is this constant, relentless battle to acquire energy, it raises the obvious question of origins.
Where do we start getting it?
Exactly. Where does it come from initially? And, well, we start at the beginning. We start with childhood.
We do.
And to understand childhood through this lens, we have to look at how the text divides this universal energy. It's not just one uniform flavor of electricity.
No, the author divides energy into yin and yang.
Okay, yin and yang.
Right. Yang energy is defined as the force that forms matter, while yin energy is the force that forms the soul.
The soul. Interesting.
And the text asserts a very specific dichotomy here. Males possess yang energy and naturally lack yin, while females possess yin energy and naturally lack yang.
I have to pause you again because here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the author completely flips standard psychology on its head.
It really does.
Because we've all heard of the Oedipus complex, where boys are overly attached to their mothers, or the Electra complex, where girls are drawn to their fathers.
Sure, classic Freud.
Right. And in mainstream psychology, that is framed in these taboo Freudian terms of subconscious desire.
But are you saying the text completely strips away the psychological and emotional aspects of these developmental stages?
Completely.
And reduces childhood to basically plugging into a parent like a battery charger?
Yes. It removes the taboo entirely and replaces it with pure energy economics.
Energy economics, wow.
The author argues these complexes are not psychological aberrations at all. They are literally just children trying to absorb the specific missing energy they need to survive from their parents.
So girls go to the dad for yang, and boys go to the mom for yin.
Precisely. Girls are drawn to the father because they naturally lack yang energy and they need his reserve. Boys are drawn to the mother because they lack yin energy. It's just a structural energy deficit.
Okay, and for a while, I imagine that system works. The parents provide the energy the child naturally lacks. It's a functional ecosystem.
But going back to the example of the teenager we started with, I was
Yeah.
reading this and thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If children are entirely reliant on their parents as these crucial, life-sustaining energy sources, then what on earth is teenage rebellion?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Why do teenagers suddenly start screaming at the very people who are supposedly keeping their energy tanks full?
Yeah.
Are they just foolishly rejecting the source?
It seems counterintuitive, I know. But the text actually provides a dual mechanism explanation for this.
Okay, tell me.
Teenage rebellion is not a rejection of the source. It's actually a highly sophisticated survival strategy.
Survival strategy.
Oh,
By slamming doors.
yes. First, as the teenager grows, their own internal energy needs expand dramatically, and they begin to feel their energy being depleted by the parents' control and rules.
Because control steals energy.
Exactly. So the rebellion acts as a defensive wall. It aims to protect their own growing energy reserve from being drained.
So when a teenager yells, "Stay out of my room," the author would translate that literally as, "Stop draining my energy reserves."
Precisely. But there's a second part. The second part of the mechanism is an offensive strategy.
Offense too.
Yes, the act of rebellion, the fighting, the boundary pushing, it's a way of forcefully extracting more energy from the parents.
By fighting with them.
Think about it. When a teenager provokes a massive emotional reaction, they are forcing the parent to focus intensely upon them.
Oh, the consciousness.
Right. In this framework, attention and emotional output are vehicles for energy transfer. They are mining the parent for energy through the friction of conflict.
Mind blown. So the door slam isn't just a boundary. It's a forceful withdrawal from the bank of mom and dad.
It's exactly that.
But eventually, the text notes, the parent's reserves simply aren't enough. As we grow up, parental energy becomes insufficient to sustain our expanding structures.
We simply get too big.
Right. So we need a new source. And this is where we leave the nest and seek out the opposite sex.
Yes, the author asserts that the ultimate subconscious purpose of marriage, of seeking lovers, of romantic partnership is purely and simply to acquire energy.
That is so cynical.
I mean, people are not consciously aware of this mechanism, of course. We call it falling in love. We call it finding a soulmate.
Sure.
But under this philosophy, we are merely hunting for our missing yin or yang to stabilize our own structure.
Let's trace the trajectory of a relationship according to the text, because the author lays out a very specific and frankly a pretty bleak timeline of how we treat each other.
It's quite the timeline.
Think about the honeymoon phase. The author states that initially, mutual love means both people are freely, willingly releasing their energy to one another.
It is an open, unhindered exchange. You're giving energy, you're receiving energy, and the text describes this as a highly pleasant, stabilizing experience.
It feels amazing.
We feel invincible when we first fall in love because our energy tanks are being rapidly filled by a willing partner.
But, and there's always a but, the author argues it doesn't last.
It rarely does.
As the energy is consumed over time, the free exchange stops. And what happens? The text says couples start trying to control each other, to forcibly absorb that energy.
Yes, the dynamic shifts from giving to taking.
When I was reading this, the classic metaphor is usually a joint bank account where people start embezzling from each other. But looking at it through the author's lens, it feels more like thermodynamics.
Oh, how do you mean?
Well, if energy cannot be created or destroyed in a closed system, a marriage that stops pulling energy from the outside universe basically becomes a closed vacuum.
Okay, I see where you're going.
If one partner's pressure drops, they physically have to siphon pressure from the other just to equalize. They use emotional manipulation to crack the other person's shell and suck the atmosphere out of them.
That is a much more accurate representation of the physics the author is implying.
Thank you.
When the free flow stops, the environment becomes a vacuum. And the tactics used to siphon that pressure are incredibly specific.
Oh, the list provided in the text is brutal. It lists arguments, fights, tantrums, sulking, ignoring each other, pretending to be ill, even threatening death.
Very dark list.
Right. The author claims every single one of these behaviors is nothing more than a tactical maneuver to vie for the other person's energy. But I really want to dig into the how here.
Okay, let's do it.
Because when you give someone the silent treatment, or you sulk, how does that actually transfer energy? You aren't physically doing anything.
It goes back to consciousness as a vehicle.
Ah, right.
When you give your partner the silent treatment, you are forcing them into a state of anxiety. You're forcing them to expend their mental bandwidth worrying about you.
Overanalyzing the situation.
Exactly, trying to fix it. You are demanding their focus. In this economy, their focus is their consciousness, and their consciousness carries their energy directly to you.
That is wild.
And when you pretend to be ill, you are demanding their physical care and their time. Again, forcing their energy to flow toward your structure.
That reframes toxic relationship dynamics entirely.
It really does.
And what about jealousy? The text has a fascinating explanation for jealousy.
Oh, the energy leakage concept.
Yes. It says, wives and husbands try to stop each other from interacting with other men or women, not out of a fear of romantic betrayal, but simply to prevent energy leakage. They want a strict monopoly on the resource.
It is pure resource hoarding. And the text delves into the power dynamics of this as well.
Right.
It notes that the more powerful a man is, the more he requires a woman's energy to sustain that structural power.
Because the bigger the structure, the more energy it needs.
Precisely. And conversely, the gentler a woman is, the more she relies on a man's energy. When one partner can no longer satisfy the massive deficit of the other, that is when infidelity occurs.
Because they're starving.
Exactly. The starved structure begins seeking energy from outside, unauthorized sources.
Okay, so if we are biologically wired to hoard energy from our partners just to survive, what does that mean for us as individuals when we are completely depleted?
When the tank is empty.
Yeah. What does a person actually look like when their tank is completely empty? The text catalogs this, and it reads like a diagnostic manual for the most difficult people you interact with.
It does. The author suggests that a person's negative personality traits are not inherent flaws, but rather glaring symptoms of an invisible energy famine.
The text says that people with bad tempers don't just have anger issues. They are fundamentally lacking energy, and their explosive reactions are desperate attempts to steal it.
Throwing a tantrum to get that consciousness focused on them?
Exactly. But it's not just the angry folks. If you see someone who is depressed, emaciated, or timid, or, and this one really made me pause, if someone is overly talkative.
Oh, the person who corners you at a party and won't stop speaking.
Yes, we all know that person.
Hey.
Being overly talkative, being eager for fame, constantly complaining, being full of hatred, or just being pretentious.
All symptoms.
The text claims every single one of these traits is a symptom of starvation. You complain because you want someone to give you sympathy, which requires them to give you their energy.
You demand their pity.
Right. You are eager for fame because you want the attention, the literal focused consciousness of millions of people funneling energy directly into you.
Which, if we connect this to the bigger picture, naturally leads us to the macro implication.
The really big picture.
Yeah. If individual interactions in marital disputes are fundamentally about controlling someone to extract their energy, what happens when we scale this up?
Right. Because the author makes a massive leap here, zooming out from a guy complaining at a party to literal nations stealing energy. Let's unpack that.
Okay.
How does a corporation or a political party actually steal my energy in this framework?
The author argues that control is the primary mechanism humans use to extract energy, and this scales perfectly up the societal ladder.
So it's all about control.
Yes. Nations, ethnic groups, political parties, religions, corporations, organizations of any kind, they are all massive structures.
And structure requires energy.
Exactly. Remember, structure requires energy to survive. Therefore, these macro structures strive to control individuals, because once they dictate your actions, they own your energy.
So when a corporation demands unreasonable hours, or a political party demands your constant outrage and attention on the news cycle,
They're taxing your consciousness.
they're acting as a giant vacuum, pulling your holographic energy into their structure to keep themselves alive, often leaving the individual completely depleted.
Exactly. And I think it's important to note for our listeners, we're not endorsing any political viewpoints here. We are strictly unpacking what this 2006 text claims about these systems.
Absolutely impartial reporting only. We're just looking at the mechanics of the author's theory.
Right. And the author makes an incredibly bold, sweeping claim here. All human conflicts and contradictions stem from this single, desperate struggle for energy.
All of them.
Wars are not fought over territory, ideology, or historical grievance. They are macro-level energy thefts.
That is a staggering thought.
The text even extends this to the planet itself, stating that humanity has blindly focused on plundering natural resources, literally stealing energy from the Earth, because we have completely ignored the alternative ways to acquire it.
The author is essentially diagnosing the entirety of human suffering, from a squabble over doing the dishes to a global world war, as the exact same pathology.
The exact same one.
We are a species addicted to stealing energy through the mechanism of control. So what does this all mean? Under this philosophy, if attempting to control each other is the root of marital sorrow and global destruction, how do we stop the cycle?
Seems like a trap, right?
Yeah, because how do we stop without just running out of energy and dying?
We still need it to live. Well, the text offers a radical prescription. It argues that for humans and nature to coexist, and for humans to peacefully coexist with each other, we must completely abandon the effort to control one another.
I have to push back on the plausibility of that.
I figured you might.
Because the author isn't just suggesting we be a little nicer to each other. The text explicitly states that, on a micro level, couples must entirely relinquish control and domination over each other.
Right.
And on a macro level, nations, religions, political parties, and organizations must actually dissolve.
Dissolve entirely.
That is a massive, seemingly impossible utopian shift. If we dissolve all these structures, if we stop pulling energy from our spouses and our employees and the earth, won't we just starve?
That is the crux of the author's solution. The text argues that we do not need to steal from each other because the universe itself is filled with an infinite supply of energy.
An infinite supply.
We merely have to change the mechanism of how we access it.
The author states we need to elevate our frequency of thought to directly obtain a constant flow of energy from the universe itself. The phrasing used is seeking energy from the greatest creator.
Right, tapping into the source.
And regardless of one's religious or philosophical background, the concept presented here is tapping into an ultimate boundless source rather than siphoning off the limited, recycled supply of the humans around you.
It requires shifting from a closed, parasitic economy to an open, infinite economy.
But how do you elevate that frequency?
Well, the text provides the password to this infinite supply. Recognize beauty and possess selfless love.
Recognize beauty and possess selfless love. But I am Honestly, really struggling with the math on this final point.
The paradox of giving.
Yes, the paradox of giving. The text explicitly states, learn to release energy. Only by releasing can you receive. The more you release, the more you gain.
It sounds contradictory.
Right. If the author just spent the entire text arguing that life is a zero-sum game of holding on to energy, how does giving it away completely unprotected actually fill you back up? It sounds crazy.
It does, until you change the metaphor. If you view yourself as a closed bucket, giving away your water empties you.
And then you're empty.
You will eventually run dry, which is why people hoard. But the author is asking you to fundamentally change your structure. You must become a pipe connected to an infinite ocean.
Our pipe.
A pipe only draws water from the ocean if the water has somewhere to exit. The very act of releasing the water creates the vacuum pressure that pulls in the infinite supply.
Oh, that makes so much more sense.
It's the fluid dynamics.
Right, so when you try to control someone, you are acting as a closed bucket. You think you are gaining energy, but the intention to control actually clogs the pipe. It depletes you.
Exactly.
But when you give it away freely, when you love selflessly without asking for a single thing back, or when you just, appreciate the beauty of a sunset, you open the valve.
You tap into the infinite universal grid.
You become a conduit, not a storage tank.
It perfectly inverts the control dynamic we spent our lives learning. We spent our entire existence building these heavily fortified walls to protect our energy and forging psychological weapons to steal it from others. And the text basically asks us to drop the weapons, tear down the walls, and simply let it flow.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started with the universe's basic structure, this cosmic recipe of structure, consciousness, and holographic energy.
The wild lightning.
Yes, the lightning. We journeyed through the author's realization that childhood attachments, romantic spats over the laundry, and even global wars might all just be symptoms of the exact same unseen energy famine.
And the takeaway for you, the listener, is incredibly practical, despite how cosmic the theory initially sounds.
How so?
Think about applying this framework to your own life today. The next time you find yourself complaining about a long line at the grocery store, or acting a little pretentious at a work meeting, or picking a petty fight with your partner over absolutely nothing, just pause.
Just pause and ask yourself, am I just trying to steal their energy right now? Is my internal tank just running low and I'm desperately trying to siphon pressure from the room?
It's a great question to ask.
And instead of stealing it, could I just look out the window and appreciate something beautiful instead? Could I just release a little positive energy and see if the pipe opens up?
It shifts the locus of control entirely back to you. Under this philosophy, you are no longer a victim of other people's draining behavior, and you are no longer desperately reliant on them to fill you up.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that really builds on everything we've unpacked today.
What is it?
If giving away energy unconditionally, releasing it to receive it, is the true secret to an infinite immoral supply, imagine what a modern human society would actually look like if its primary currency wasn't money, or power, or control.
That's deep.
What if the primary currency of our world was the intentional, selfless release of positive energy to strangers? How would our cities, our jobs, and our daily interactions fundamentally transform if we were all conduits instead of vampires?
It is a fascinating, complex vision of the future to consider.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. It has been an incredible journey, and we encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, stay curious.